Well, there we have it. The clear coat's now flashed off. Today it's all about sanding the clear coat, and that's sometimes referred to as color sanding. So how are we going to go about doing this? I've got everything that you need sitting here on the table, and I'll run you through that now. So I'm going to start with 1000 grit paper, wet paper, on a wet sanding block. Then I'm going to move up to 1200, then I'm going to move up to 1500, then I'm going to move up to 2000 with the orbital sander. Then I'm going to move up to 3000, again with the orbital sander. We then move on to the Farkla compound, the G3 compound, with a reasonably rough buff. I then move on to the ultrafine polish with quite a soft buff. I'm then going to try this Mother's CMX ceramic coating. I've never tried that before, so I'm going to give that a crack. And you'll obviously need some microfiber towels and the buffing machine itself. So that's it. That's the full complement of what you need, plus a little bit of that elbow grease. One other important kit I forgot to mention. You'll need yourself a bucket of water and a sponge. And in the bucket of water, you just put a tiny little drop of dishwashing detergent as a lubricant. That's it. Let's get to sanding. All right, I'm starting to color sand the panel with 1000 grit. Just knocking off the high ridges and knocking off the crowns of the orange peel. You want to keep your paper nice and wet. So here's what we're trying to accomplish with our color sanding. You can see the high ridges here being taken off, and you can see down here it's mostly flat. So I'll stop that with the 1000 grit and move on. But the idea is we're just taking off the crown of all of these high spots here in the clear coat. So that's what the bonnet looks like sanded down with 1000 grit. And at this point in time you might be thinking, holy shit, Terry, you just wrecked it. Stay the course, keep going with the next grade of sandpaper, taking a little bit of orange peel, a little bit extra orange peel off each time you go, and a little bit of extra crap off the bonnet each time you go, and you get there. But yes, right now looks pretty ugly. That's what the bonnet looks like after 1200 grit. You can see a little bit of orange peel still there and about, and I'm kind of using that orange peel as almost a bit of a guide coat. So I'm actually down to 2000 grit now, and this is when we'll start to use the machine. 2000 and then 3000. There's the bonnet, sanded down to 3000 grit, and you can see that there's a slight sheen on it once you get down to those fine levels of sandpaper. So the next step is to hit it with some polishing compound and buff those 3000 scratches out. And this is a reasonably coarse compound called Farkla G3, and that's what it sort of looks like. So I'll wipe that bonnet down with a tack rag, get any of the little bits and pieces that are sort of stuck to it on it that might scratch the paint, and get stuck into polishing. A bit of compound on our pad. Spread it around the bonnet. And then start polishing. The trick when you get to the edges is always have that buffing wheel running off of the edge, not onto it. And don't spend a lot of time on the edge either, or you can cut or burn through the paint very quickly. And you can see that I've got the buffer on quite a slow speed. It's got a speed setting of 0 to 10, and this is on 2. That's our first pass of G3. And you can still see a haze. It started to pull the scratches out, but there's still quite a bit of a haze there. That's the purpose or the reason that you do your second G3 before moving on to the fine compound. And once again, I got to give a shout out to Eric at Queensland Paint Supplies. I was using the G3 compound to buff it out, and I was just having a really hard time with it. Just had to put so much effort into it to get the scratches out from the 300 grit paper, and it just seemed a little bit overly excessive to me. Anyway, I went out and had a chat with Eric, and he put me on to this stuff, Finixa, and my goodness, that is one magic product. Apparently the same sort of abrasive level as the G3, but my goodness, does it ever cut quickly and leaves an absolutely beautiful finish. One thing I forgot to mention was I did just hit the bonnet as well with this Mother's CMX ceramic spray coating. I've never used it before in the past, so I thought I'd give it a crack. And who knows what the longevity of this stuff is like, but it didn't dull the shine that I already had on it from all the polishing work that I've done, so that's a good start. If you have a look at the reflection of the trees, for example, in the bonnet, it gives you a little bit of an idea of the flatness and the gloss of the finish. So that's it. Time now to install some ductwork. Okay, that scoop's got a little clip that fits in that square hole. And then all of these studs will obviously locate where they need to. So that baby should clip in. Just like that. And washers and studs go on the bottom side. And I imagine you shouldn't over tighten these suckers, because that being plastic, I'd suspect you could deform it pretty easily if you did over tighten it. That scoop is now fully installed from the top side. Time to flip the bonnet over and start to install the ductwork. Alright, let's mount this ductwork. Just hop in there. It's a one-way trip for these boys too. You don't want to have to try and pull them out after they're already in. Here's the 200 series duct that we will have to modify. Alright, what I need to do is mark the underside of this to know where to cut it. So there's the cut I need to make on the bottom of this duct. And we will just one more time double check that. Now, I think before I pin that down, I'll get the bonnet insulation. One going there, beautiful. One going there, magnificent. Okay, we'll pop these little trim pieces in. Down our little clips. Now I will get some Sikaflex and just take this rubber up here and bond it to the top or to the bottom of the 200 series ductwork. That's the amount of space and air that we've got as a capability of flowing through this intercooler now, which is massive. It's got to be at least double what the 200 ductwork would allow through. Alright, the underside of the bonnet is completed. Just waiting for that glue to go off where those clamps are located to glue the two scoops together. And that's it. We're ready to fit it on the car. So let's get this bonnet fitted. Pull off our gas struts, of which there are two. Only I'm actually going to pull off this one end, leave the other end fitted, and hopefully my bonnet holder upper works. And it does. Just going to crack these hinge bolts ever so slightly. Throw a blanket up there so we don't chip paint. And I'll go get my helpers. So just so that when I undo these two bolts, what will happen is the bonnet will want to slide backwards, and you're going to just put your hand.
It's going to jam my fingers cool.
Exactly.
Should Hamish be at that spot? I'm great. I'm strong.
Yeah, you sit over, you go in that corner as well, and Hamish should go in the center.
Oh, it's my left hand. My Hamish is the cynical. You got to put your hands under. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. No tripping.
I'm trying to. I'm tripping over shit.
Sweet.
Okay. Yep, careful.
Okay. And now you two girls can rest your hand against that cloth.
Yep.
Okay.
That center thing.
Lovely. So this is going to be experiment number 1. Got the scoop taped off. Gonna get out into the highway, get the engine up to operating temperature, and do about a 10-kilometer run with the scoop taped off. I'll then repeat that with that tape removed so that we've got full air going through the intercooler. Alright, I'm sitting at the traffic lights right now, getting ready to head out onto the road. The engine is up to full operating temperature now. Alright, we're at 80 kilometers an hour, about 1500 RPM on a dead flat road, and we'll just keep motoring along here. Okay, what we've got here in front of us are the results of the experiment that I conducted. And in that experiment, there's 3 conditions. One with the 79 series scoop taped off, and in that instance, we've got air only going through the original 200 series ductwork. The second is when I took the tape off, but left the bonnet protector in place, and in that case, we've got air passing through both the 200 and 79 ductwork, but we've got airflow disrupted across the surface of the bonnet because of the bonnet protector. And in a third, I've removed the bonnet protector, so we've got air passing through both with no disruptions whatsoever. I ran the experiment at 2 different speeds, 80 and 90 kilometers an hour, and you can see the engine coolant temperature is basically the same across those 2 different speeds, and you can see that the intake air temperature is basically the same across those 2 different speeds. So we can make some real valid conclusions based on this experiment. Where we want to focus our attention is this intake air temperature turbo, which is the temperature after the intercooler. That's also called the charge air temperature. And in the first condition, with the 79 series scoop taped off, we've taken our charge air to 40 degrees Celsius, and that's a delta of 14, delta being the difference between 40 degrees and 26 degrees. In our second condition, that delta has come down to 10, so we've pulled an additional 4 degrees Celsius out of the charge air by running air through the 79 series ductwork and the 200 ductwork in concert. If we look at it when I've removed the bonnet protector, we've gained ourselves an additional 3 degrees Celsius. So in total, we've pulled an additional 7 degrees Celsius out of the charge air temperature with the 79 series ductwork and the 200 ductwork working in concert with one another compared to just the 200 series ductwork on its own. And 7 degrees Celsius in the charge air temperature is a massive drop. So I'm absolutely wrapped with that. So in terms of the total time that it took me to do this project, I worked on it over 6 weekends, and on average I put in about 5 hours on a Saturday and 5 hours on a Sunday. That gave me 60 hours total, and then I probably worked an additional 2 hours 2 days a week during the weekdays, which was 20 hours. So that's a total of about 80 hours. Of course, I'm an amateur, and that would have taken me a lot longer than it would have taken a professional to do this. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're looking at how long this is going to take. So here's a breakdown of the cost of the project. Call it $1,800 in round numbers, and that does not include any of my labor. A lot of the consumables I had on hand, so if we have a look here, we've got sandpaper, masking tape, MIG wire, that sort of stuff I had all to hand, and I've just pulled a number of $75 out of my backside on that one. And polish, I used 20% of the bottle, so that worked out to $9.68. On the Benixa polish, I used 10% of the bottle of the ceramic polish, and that cost me $59 in total, so $5.90 at 10%. Now this number here, call it $1,200, is probably what you could get away with if you had two things. One, if you used your own bonnet and didn't buy a secondhand bonnet, you can cross out that $350 and save yourself $350. Two, if you had a secondhand 79 series bonnet, which I couldn't get my hand on, you can cross that one out, and that cost out, and probably throw another $350 in it for the second-hand bonnet, and that'll get you to that $1,100, $1,200 mark. So if you're going to do it yourself, use your bonnet and get a second-hand 79 series. I reckon you can get it for $1,200. If you're going to go down the route that I did, it's probably going to cost you around $1,800. If you're going to get a shop to do it, then of course you've got to pay this labor figure, and I'd have no idea what number you could throw at it on that one, but it'd be a big one anyway. So there you go. That's the entire cost of the project set out in front of you. Well, if you're planning on doing this yourself, as you can see, it certainly can be done. These are the bits that I've got left over. And of course, in my case, I've got the original 200 series bonnet left over. All right, here's the final reveal. Fully installed, fully tested, and I am just absolutely wrapped with the finished product, I gotta say. It looks seriously tough. There is one more thing I need to do. There are two clips that sit underneath that little bit of plastic on the inner scoop that Mr. Toyota shortchanged me on. So I need to go down to the dealership and pick up two of them, and that'll pull that gap down. But other than that, she's done. 7 degree cooler inlet air temperatures. And it looks the part too. So after all that work, all the effort, all the cost, would I do it again? I'd have to say in a heartbeat. It really sets the car apart, and it looks completely different from most of the other 200s on the road. And you got to admit, 200s are a little bit like assholes. Everybody's got one. So if you're going to have something that stands out a little bit, do it. For everyone who's commented and followed along during this journey, this 7-episode journey, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time, and I really do appreciate your support. It helped me push through some of the more difficult times when I was doing this. So it's kind of a collective project, I guess, in that respect. All right, that's it from Jafffa Adventures. Keep the shiny side up, everybody. And we'll see you out there on the trails.